Welcome back, everybody, to the Fixed Ops Mastermind powered by OEM Interactive. This is a We Are Week, which is Women Educating in Automotive Retention and Excellence. I have with me my co-host, Katie Mares, today, and Sammy Jo Mannering. And Sammy, I meant to ask you how you pronounce your dealership's name.
Tamiami. Hyundai and
that's actually how I would have pronounced it. And so, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Our show is brought to us by Automotive Warranty Network Incorporated. They are a family-owned and operated warranty claims management service based out of Denver, Colorado. For over 30 years, they have 300 highly qualified administrators, team leaders, auditors, trainers, and support staff that have been processing manufacturer warranty claims. They currently process more than 100 million in warranty per month. You can find them at awninc.com. Thank you to our friends at Automotive Warranty Network Incorporated. And now we get into the show. And we break the show up into 3 segments. This week, the 3 segments are: how did we get here? Why are we here? And the future. And so, Sammy Jo, we want to know first how you arrived in automotive. Many of us arrive by accident, and I'm guessing you probably have a similar story.
I would say it was definitely either by accident or dumb luck or called by God, whichever verbiage you would prefer to use. I actually was working at a thrift store as a cashier, and I had gotten a phone call from somebody that I knew who was in the automotive industry and said, "Hey, this dealer I'm working at, they're opening this giant in-house rental fleet and you would be amazing for the job. They want to meet you. Would you come on in?" And so I did, and I had a couple of interviews with the rental manager at the time, fixed operations director. On my last interview, I sat down with the fixed operations director and he shook my hand and he sat down and he said, "Well, shit." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "We were going to do this thing with you, but I really like your handshake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you on. I'm going to pay you $10 an hour and you're going to do whatever I say. Does that sound good?" And so that's kind of how it started for me, was being roped into it that way. I started off in the parts department, and then the fixed ops director had me start taking a lot of training online with the OEM and got certified for warranty administration, went and did some training for that, and really just kind of grew from there.
Wow. I want to point out, most women underestimate the handshake. And when you're in a male-dominated space, when you can give a proper handshake, it goes a long way.
100%. I mean, in quite all honesty, it changed my life, and it changed the life that I'm able to provide for my family, just by doing so. My dad was in automotive my whole life. He was an automotive technician for a Chevy dealer up in Wisconsin. So I really kind of grew up in the service side of things, and never really had it pictured that that's where I would end up landing years later. But it's worked out so far.
That's very cool. And I'm just gonna chime in one last time on the handshake, because it shows confidence. And I think any woman that is listening in today should practice that handshake, because it really does show the confidence in you showing up. And so I just think that story is so awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Sammy Jo.
Thanks.
That is a great story of how somebody got into the business, again, by accident, as most of us.
By handshake.
By handshake, yes, by accidental handshake.
Yeah.
Or on purpose handshake by accident. It's the way most of us ended up in this business. Not necessarily what we pictured we would be doing. Maybe we got in on purpose, but didn't picture we'd be doing that 20 years later. And so what has kept you in the business? You had the opportunity to come in and do whatever the manager says for $10 an hour. But something has
I'm
kept.
actually having, give me one moment. I'm having
Yes.
a hard time getting your feed. So I do apologize. If you could repeat the question, it broke up just a little bit there.
Yeah. So you came in by accident, but you're still here. Can you hear me now? No?
I'm getting nothing here.
Dun, dun. If I mute you and
I'm sorry, I
unmute you.
apologize. Give me one
Nope.
second. Let me see if I can switch to another Wi-Fi network here, if that makes a difference. It shows I have service, but I
Yeah, we can hear
hate
you.
to keep you guys waiting on a poor connection here.
It's all fine. So, Katie,
Yeah.
just you and me right now. So I love her story of how she wound up in the business, right? And she was working as a cashier at a thrift store, right? Now you extrapolate that out over the number of years she's been in the business, and even if she made it to the very top of the thrift store chain, she's not earning the living for her family that she is at the dealership. Are you back, Sammy Joe?
Yes, I'm back. I can hear you well now.
Yes.
Decided Wi-Fi is not the way to go because technology is not always the way to go. So we're just going to use data today.
That's all good. It's we could still hear you fine, by the way. And so my question was, you got into the business.
You can hear me.
Yes, by accident. But what has influenced you to stay in the business? You're still here years later.
You know, it is a love-hate relationship for putting out fires. You know, I love a challenge. I am somebody who gets bored really, really, really quickly. I'm always looking for the next task or the next project. And so this industry always brings that level of excitement for me. You can never learn too much. There's always something new and exciting every day. Every time I think I've seen everything that there is to see, something new walks through the door. And so that keeps it pretty invigorating for me, to where there's emotional fulfillment.
Yeah, that's definitely true. There is always something new. And I can tell you, I only left the dealerships 4 or 5 years ago after 30 plus years. And it still amazed me that there were days when something new would come up. When you thought you couldn't see anything different. What was that?
I said, I bet you miss it a little bit.
A little bit. I still get it's fun because I still get to go back into stores with doing training and coaching and things. And I say now that the stores are like grandchildren, right? I can go in, I can take care of them a little bit, and then I can leave and leave them with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to keep taking care of them. So what do you find the most challenging for a situation? Oh, we lost Sammy Joe, Katie.
Oh boy. Well, when she returns, I do want to know, since she has this love-hate relationship with putting out fires, and she loves the fact that things are constantly changing, I'd love to know her input on from a female perspective, what has changed and what that love-hate relationship might be from a female perspective in fixed ops.
Yes. And she's back.
If we have her coming back. There she is.
I'm so sorry for expected technical error.
It's all good.
Yeah.
You were just saying that you have this love-hate relationship with putting out fires and the fact that there's always something new and dynamic, which has kept you, moving forward in the automotive space. But from a female perspective, especially in, the fixed ops department and area of the stores, what has kept you there as a woman? Like, have you seen the changes you've needed to see? Have you been part of the changes? what's the positive about a female in the space?
I think that it just brings a new and exciting perspective that hasn't necessarily been around in the industry for very long. You know, it is such a heavily male dominated space. And so female perspective changes things. I think it brings a little bit more emotion and empathy to the piece. And I'm not saying that men are not empathetic by any means. But I believe that women in this industry have an opportunity to view things differently and to do things differently. I had a former boss had explained it to me one time that he enjoyed having female in his store because he could give a man an instruction, say, hey, I want you to take this street here and then take a right here and go over to Chick-fil-A and pick up some lunch for everybody and come back. And his perspective, a man would try to find the shortcut one way or another. And that the woman would beat him back 10 out of 10 times because she would follow that specific instruction and arrive back at the dealership in time. And so that has kind of always played in my mind a little bit. I also think that there is a level of trust with the consumer that is automatically built just by having a female presenting, be it a service advisor, be it somebody on the other side in sales. When they are greeted by a woman, the guard goes down a little bit, which makes for better connection with the customer, in my opinion.
I love that. And it's so true. And I'm maybe biased because that's what I focus on. That's what I do. I teach dealerships on how to provide an experience for the world's most influential consumer, being the woman. And that's my expertise. So I love hearing that from you. I would love to know, though, you know, unfortunately, women in the automotive space are consistently talking about what's wrong with the space, you know, be that it is male dominated, that they talk about the obstacles very often. But being a woman that has risen in her pathway in a dealership in the automotive industry, I would love for you to share with the women that are listening to this, or maybe women that are outside the industry that might by chance or by handshake find their way into the industry. What's good about the industry from a woman's point of view? Like, what can they look forward to?
There's no glass ceiling here. There really isn't, in my opinion. There's so much room for growth and so many different avenues that you can take, and you can choose where your stopping point is, or you can continue to elevate your life further in it. I think that it is one of the very, very few industries that do exist where you can just walk your way into a six-figure salary without a college degree. And I do think that it is also beneficial that most of the training is provided by the dealership. If you find a place that values you, that values your growth, that values what you bring to the table, they're going to invest that in you in return, in the form of education, in the form of your pay plan, in the form of your appreciation and your benefits and those kind of things. And I think that is really something to be competitive, you know. I couldn't see the amount of growth or the quick growth in any other industry, especially for women.
Yeah. Oh, I see. I totally agree with you. And I think right now with, you know, DEI being such a polarizing spotlight being shone on male dominated industries like automotive, the time is now to be a woman in the industry because
Absolutely.
our eyes are wide open to making those advances. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and it from my standpoint, through the years, almost without fail, every time I have had a female advisor or a female manager, they have outperformed their male counterparts. Sometimes, to your point, Sammy Joe, of that instant trust that they have with customers, and then you back that up with that instant trust and gets backed up when they know what they're talking about with a customer, right? Which then just builds that trust even more. And you touched on empathy earlier. That's a huge thing. It's a huge thing when you're a leader, right? Having to understand being empathetic, excuse me, empathetic to people. um, oh, she's keeping us on our toes here, on our toes. But being a service advisor, and being empathetic to customers, is just, it's huge. And especially in this post-COVID world, like COVID happened, everybody was super nice to each other, and then somehow about 6 months into that, the switch flicked, and everybody was just mad at each other. And if you're an empathetic person, you can help to overcome that stuff. What do you think is what do you think is your most difficult situation to have to deal with within the dealership, whether it's customer wise or personnel wise?
I would say that it's absolutely personnel wise. You get just such a wide variety of personality types, of backgrounds. There's just so much diversity, and knowing that not everybody can be managed the same way, not everybody can be treated the same way or spoken to the same way. Constructive conversation I might have with one employee could be taken as super offensive if I have the same exact conversation in the same tone with another employee. So I think that that's probably the most difficult part of it, is relating to all the different personality types, getting to know people on a personal basis, and what is important to them and what they're working for and why they're here. So that's, yeah.
Excellent. And that's a huge part of being a leader, right? Is realizing that you can't lead everybody the same way. The first time I became a service manager was somewhere around 1994. I cringe saying that. And I'm happy to say I failed miserably at that first manager's job. And in years of reflecting, that's one of the things that I tried to do, was I tried to manage everybody exactly the same, and tried to, be the same person that I was when I came from being a service advisor at a different store to go be the manager at this store, and that just doesn't work. You definitely,
Sounds
everybody
about right.
needs to be treated as an individual. That's for sure. And so
Absolutely.
that's segment one, and segment one was brought to us by IntelliCheck. And before we jump into segment two, I'm going to do the quote of the week. Our quote of the week is brought to us by Petra Automotive Products this week, and it says, "The question isn't who is going to let me, it's who is going to stop me." From Anne Rand. And I think that I think that quote is appropriate from the standpoint of, Katie, you talked about this being a male dominated world, male dominated industry. But this is an industry that forever has needed more women in it. It wouldn't have the reputation that it still carries around if we had more women in it earlier. And so now as we start to hopefully get more women into the industry, what are some of the things that we can try and do, Sammy Joe, to attract more women into the business?
Honestly, I think that getting out into the world and recruiting people that way is really the only way to bait people into this. It's not very often, unless it's an office position or receptionist position, that you get a slew of women applying for jobs in the automotive industry. So I found that it is most beneficial to actually go out there and get them. The cashier at the Circle K who just has exceptional customer service, the lady at the mattress store who is killer at sales and would just do a phenomenal job, and really just kind of hand picking people out of these jobs or careers that they're in, and starting a conversation and asking them
Mhm.
if they enjoy what they're doing. What aspects of it do they enjoy? What aspects do they not like as much? And then, of course, the $1 million question that baits everyone to the automotive industry is, are you making enough money?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how much money that they can make. You know, going from with the same skill set that it takes to be a great cashier at the Circle K, they can become a service advisor, and probably easily triple what they're making at the other place.
Absolutely,
I I
without a
always
doubt.
I always carried around my business cards, and anytime I ran into somebody like that, it was just like, "Hey, I've been really impressed with your customer service. If you ever decide you want to
Mhm.
do something else, just give me a call, and I've probably got a job you might enjoy." And I would just leave it at that.
I think it's important too to take a look at how we recruit, not just recruiting in terms of in person, but how how our job ads look and what language we're using. There was a study done by Textito in 2020 that says that job ads with
Oh,
a
goodness.
male focused tone pulled in 43% more male applicants, while those with a more female coded description attracted a staggering 80% more females.
Wow.
So I
That this
think it's
keeps
important.
happening during.
Are you okay there?
Goodness gracious. No, I lost you guys again, and I am so
Oh.
sorry for the frequent interruptions here. Am I
It's
back on? Can
it's
you hear
life.
me?
You're
We can
back
hear
with us.
you. Can you hear
Okay.
us?
Yes, I can hear you
Okay.
now. I
Sweet.
feel like a Verizon Wireless commercial years ago.
So I was just saying that, the way we post the verbiage that we use and the language that we use in job ads is extremely important to pulling women in. And that a study was done that when a job ad has a more female focused language, that it will actually pull in 80% more women than a more
Wow.
male focused language. So I think a great way, Dave, to answer your question as well is, we should have our silent sellers, being our job ads that are out there on Indeed and our website and so on and so forth, focused on language that a woman will be attracted to, so they know that they can in fact possibly dip their toe in the water of this industry.
Mhm. Yeah,
I
that's
think
an
that's actually
interesting.
really fascinating.
Right? I
Yeah.
when I pulled that
Yeah.
study, I couldn't believe it too. I was like, wow. So the language we use, it matters.
Well, language is definitely important. I would be really interested in reading this study, because I can't say that's anything that has come across my mind, is to use
Mhm.
specific verbiage to bait with women specifically. And it's definitely something I should visit.
I can share some information with you. So I'll send over how to create a job ad for women that is focused on female focused
That
verbiage.
sounds great. That sounds
Okay,
great.
cool.
I would appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Excellent. That's what the mastermind is all about, is making those connections and sharing the education with others.
I was
So
hoping I would learn something new today.
Yay.
so were we. That's why we
Fantastic.
invited you. So
I love it.
so there's always a lot of talk about mentors, and a lot of women will say, well, there were no mentors that looked like me, which I understand that, and I can understand it being maybe a little more difficult to find a mentor, but I also don't believe that that mentors should necessarily look like us, right? Because then we're just perpetuating the exact same thing, right? If I find a mentor who is another, I'll grace myself with middle-aged male, right? Then I'm just perpetuating that, right? Whereas if I have a younger female mentor, right, now I'm going to learn some different things and some different viewpoints and ways to look at the industry or whatever it is I'm trying to learn. Who have been your mentors along the way, Sammy Joe?
Honestly, I've been blessed with so many. I will say that I did have a phenomenal comptroller once who's a female, who really helped me to navigate in the early years being a woman in this industry. How to thicken my skin, how to mind my emotions, bridle my tongue when speaking to somebody so that I could speak directly in a form that wasn't taken as offensively
Mhm.
in so many terms that people would use when a woman is being direct. So that was absolutely a highlight for me growing up in this career. I've also had some service directors and shop foremen who were just never afraid to share all of the information and the knowledge that they have. They were never afraid to answer a question. And I think that the most important thing in finding a mentor in this industry is finding somebody who doesn't work in fear. Because when you try to get mentored by
Mm.
somebody who is working in fear of their position, they are less likely to share with you all of the knowledge and the skill set and the toolbox that you need to be successful in it out of fear of
Yep.
losing their own
Mhm.
position.
Mhm.
So finding people who are really, really confident in their own skin and the job has been a game changer for me.
Yeah, that is an excellent point. It is something I'm sure it happens in other industries too, but I've seen that plenty of times in this industry where, even a service advisor, when a new service advisor comes in and you'll hear them be not as forthcoming in answering a question that a younger advisor has asked, and
100%.
that in the end, it's gonna we're gonna rise everyone up when we're helping somebody
Oh
else,
yeah.
right? You're
Yes.
not gonna lose your job to somebody else unless there was some other reason. It's not gonna be because you answered a question for them.
100%. 100%.
I think too it takes a bit of gumption and confidence to ask for a mentor or for somebody to sponsor you as a woman. And so my question to you, Sammy Joe, is how much more important has confidence been for you versus competence in being a
Ooh.
female service director?
That is a really, really loaded question. It's like a really loaded question.
Because I think they're both equally as important. Um, uh, I think that thick skin really comes into play when it comes to the confidence factor.
Mhm.
Because if I'm having a difficult day here, or I feel like I am just absolutely failing at a task that I put at hand, I can't let those emotions show here. I have to wear the confidence all the time. I can go cry about it in my car later if I have to. Um, uh, b- Competence is probably more key. The more you understand, the more you're willing to absorb, the more teachable that you are, the more an asset you are to a store. And so, when you're competent enough to digest the things that are being taught to you, you have a better opportunity to be um, cross trained in several different areas that really make you an
Mhm.
asset and irreplaceable to the company.
Yeah, I
Mm.
totally agree in terms of knowledge, you need to have it. But when I mean competence or confidence over competence is when you do have to shake that hand or raise your hand or, and I believe they are hand in hand, by the way. But I just think that a lot of times there's a stat out there that says men will take an opportunity when they are 60% qualified, like when they feel like they're like, yeah, I got 6 out of 10 qualifications. I check 6 out of 10 boxes. But a woman won't take a risk unless she's 100% qualified. So we could be as competent as every single man out there and more, but we don't take the risk because we wait till we have all of the knowledge, all of the training. So I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
So I have seen that TED talk and I have
Read that book, so I know what you're talking about. The goal is to be
brave and not perfect, right? So
Yes.
I think that is extremely, extremely important.
I think if people have the right mentors in their personal life, it helps them along with this as well. I had been fortunate before really kind of fighting to grow in the industry that I had a gentleman who was an acupuncturist of mine who told me a story about a time he really, really needed a job and he had no experience in the field and he applied for this head chef position at a restaurant and had no idea what he was doing whatsoever, but he BS'd his way through it to the point that he got the job and he just kind of had to wing it and ended up becoming very good at it. And I thought, wow, what a thing. What a
Yeah.
thing to just throw something at the wall and hope that it sticks and hope that I'm successful in it. But that confidence and just knowing that you are striving to be the best that you can possibly be and do the best that you can in your position every day will always catapult you further, regardless of the circumstance.
Do you have any possible, because I mean, I'm pretty sure, and the handshake story gave it away, but I'm pretty sure you're pretty confident lady. Do you have any kind of tips for the women watching on things that maybe you've done to create a more confident mindset in your career?
Be loud.
Be loud, have the difficult conversations, put yourself out there, because if you don't put yourself out there, the answer is no every single time. And so really just taking that leap of faith, you know, setting a goal for yourself is so important. Where do you envision yourself 5 years from now? And making a plan for how to get there. And you can't get there without having those difficult conversations. You know, my husband and I were just having a conversation the other night. Never once in this industry specifically have I seen anybody grow who kept their mouth shut. Now, I'm not saying to be boisterous and not bridle your tongue, but I think that having an opinion and sharing your opinion is very, very, very important, not just for yourself and your own personal growth, but for your team, for the betterment of the company. Because if you are not speaking the things that come to mind, no one's going to know the next $1 million idea or whatever it is. So yeah, I would say that's really my piece of my advice, just to be loud and put it out there. And have the hard talks.
You heard it, ladies. Be loud. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the reality is that 99% of us are faking it every day, right? We don't have it all figured out. We don't have it all figured out. We're trying to just get through the day.
I have it all figured out. What are you talking about?
I said 99%. You're the 1%er.
She's got it
right? At least that's what I tell the world. I mean, I'm loud about that.
So I had a guest on a few weeks ago named Mark Pittman, and he wrote a book, The Surprising Gift of Doubt. And he talks about the imposter syndrome and how it's actually a good thing to have that. It means that you are moving in the right direction, that you are stretching yourself, because if you don't feel that way, then you're not doing anything that's stretching you.
I love that. So on my podcast, on the Ladies Take Control podcast, I had a woman by the name of Heidi McCleman. I can't say her last name. I should know this. But Heidi is incredible. She's a confidence coach. And she said the same thing, is that she would be like worried for a woman if they didn't have a little bit of imposter syndrome, because that means they're not pushing themselves hard enough or walking through fear with courage. And so she says the same thing. Doubt and imposter syndrome means you are on the edge of doing something great and you should just keep going.
Mm-hmm. And so, Sammy Jo,
I agree with that entirely.
Sorry about that. He froze up there for a second. So this probably goes to your be loud point, but for women who are either coming into the industry, thinking about coming into the industry, or already here but want to move up into a leadership position, what are some things that you think they should be doing to either prepare for that or to create that opportunity for themselves?
the very first thing would be just obtaining all the knowledge that you possibly can, remaining teachable at any given moment, and asking all of the questions, even to the point where you inside feel like you're being annoying. Don't stop asking the questions until you're confident in the answers that you have. Manufacturer training, I think, is so important, not just for whatever your position is in the dealership and what you're certified for, but asking your boss to open up those other trainings for you, to learn the way that things work, a rental or any of the other aspects of the dealership, to really just kind of gain all that. And then in addition to that, finding out what your strengths and your weaknesses are, and really just catering what your goal is to that. Finding somebody in the dealership who has the personality traits, the leadership traits, and the salary that you are striving to achieve, and really developing a relationship with them and asking them all of the questions that may not be in your training. That would really be my advice. Don't go to a place that's going to put a glass ceiling on you. That's never going to let you grow out of it. If your gut tells you something is off, it is off, and move on to the next place, because there is always room in this industry, and there is always a store that is willing to grow somebody to their potential. I think that that's a conversation that should be had when somebody first starts. Hey, this is my goal. Am I going to be able to get there at this store? Because then you can create a timeline for yourself. If you know your max is 2 years out, then you've got 2 years to absorb everything you can there before you go to the next place. And if you find the next place that doesn't have a ceiling for you, then it's yours for the taking if you work hard enough.
I love that.
Yeah.
Right.
So well said. So well said.
So we are in the middle of segment 2 here, and segment 2 is being brought to us by Parts Edge, power tool for your parts department. So Sammy Joe, when you first took over as the service director, right, or your first leadership position, I'll ask, because I don't know if you had a leadership position before this. The first leadership position that you had within automotive, what did you find was the biggest challenge initially in moving into that position?
Being taken seriously as something other than an administrator. I really think it really was the being a female for real that that caused the issue for me and made it so difficult to really kind of break through that doorway and advance myself. So I went from warranty administrator to warranty manager, rental manager, assistant service manager. It was kind of a cesspool of things that I was doing. And I think that the leadership that I had at the time made it difficult for me too, because I was told verbatim from the owner at the store at the time that he wasn't sure anybody was going to look at me as anything different than like a secretary. And so, but for me and for my personality type, I think that was the fire that I needed to prove somebody wrong, to tell them I am so much more than some secretary, which I've never been in my entire life, by the way. So for me, it's the proving someone wrong, the proving someone wrong who said that I couldn't do what I knew I could do and what I had the skill set to do.
I will say on the secretary side of it, though, there are a whole lot of secretaries out there who are making men in leadership positions look way better than they are.
Because they're having the difficult conversations.
That's right. And so our stat of the week is brought to us by Parts Edge. And it says 50% of service advisors at new car dealerships are women, but women make up only 8% of total employees across the dealerships. And that is from an autonews.com study from September of 2023. I think you definitely see more female service advisors now than you ever did before. I think it's a terrific pairing of skill sets that women possess that a lot of men don't, but between organization, as you mentioned earlier, empathy, and being able to actually juggle multiple things at one time, which you need to do as a service advisor. Everybody is throwing things at you. The fact that there's 50% service advisors that are women and only 8% of total dealership employees that are women, that's a big disconnect there. But because that should transfer through, right? If you have 50% women in as service advisors, as they move up and move into different positions, that should be increasing the percentage of women in the dealerships, and yet it is still very, very low. And so, what are some of the things that we need to do? We've talked about some of them already. What are some of the different kind of things that we can do to make this industry more appealing for women?
Honestly, it's the work-life balance is a really, really difficult thing for the woman, especially the woman who is a mother, the woman who is a wife. As we know, there is no higher paying job or higher title job in this industry that equates a better work-life balance. And so when you're choosing your family first, which is what everybody always should do, is choose their family first, it's really hard to swallow a schedule like working 8 days on and 1 day off in the sales department, or working 60 hours a week in the service department. Those are really, really difficult things. But I think that the industry is changing. I think that these kind of hour requirements are going to change, and they're kind of going to navigate into a different direction as the next generation of workers really comes in and the last generation rolls out. Because people just aren't willing to work those 60-hour work weeks anymore. Everybody's more concerned about their mental health, about the betterment of their family, about quality time, about self-care and rest. And those are all things that are really, really difficult to be mindful of while you're working these really grueling work weeks. So I think it's just a time thing with getting more women in, and also women having the, I guess, gusto to really just go in and have a conversation with a service manager or a sales manager and say, hey, do you have flexible scheduling for someone like me who has four children at home? You know, I have to take my kid to school at 8:30 in the morning, or I have to pick my kid up at 3:50 on Tuesdays to take them to soccer, and really just finding an environment that will work that with you. I have found that when you are more catering to the mom, around her schedule with her children, around sick kids, whatever it may be, that when she comes into work, she gives you 120% of her effort every single time. And I've never lost that way by telling someone, it's okay, I understand Susie's sick, you can't work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'll see you on Thursday, Friday. And they come in Thursday, Friday, and they rock it out because they're so grateful for that. They're grateful to be able to be at home with their kids without being in fear of their employment.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, there's you may have to get creative. It may be difficult for a period as you try to change schedules around to make that flexibility available to people. One of the last groups that I worked for, service advisors were not allowed to work more than 45 hours a week.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and that's there are times when you go, how am I supposed to schedule that? Like, how am I supposed to have coverage the entire time, the entire 6 days that we're open? We weren't open on Sundays, thankfully, but 6 days, and you have to cover, when people are only working 45 hours was the max that they could work. And it was a great thing for the advisors. What you get in effort in that 45 hours is so much more than you get in that 60 hours. That other 15 hours, when you're putting in a 12-hour day, those last 4 hours of that day are certainly not the productive hours.
It's really difficult, especially when you're talking about working a 60-hour week during a full moon and you're emotionally being beat in the face by customers all day. It's a really, really difficult thing that makes people not want to
Right.
get up and come to work in the morning.
Hmm.
So we try to be mindful of that, stagger some schedules, say, hey, you're working this Saturday, you want to go home early today, those
Yeah.
kind of things.
Yeah.
Still haven't had an opportunity to navigate into the 45-hour work week. It is a goal of mine.
Hmm.
But we'll see if we get there. Like I said, I think it's going to be it's a journey when you've got people who have been in this industry as long as they have to kind of break the cycle of the way things have always been done and navigate into the new culture. It's a tricky
Yeah.
thing to try
Yeah.
to do.
And one of the essential things when you start to go to that 45-hour week for advisors is the fact that you have a really great cohesive team. So you have to have a good culture at the store, because obviously, advisor A
Absolutely.
is going to have to pick up the I'll call it the slack. That sounds negative, but the slack of advisor B, when they're not there to maintain that 45-hour week, right? So they need to be able to work together and help each other's customers without being like, oh, why do I have to take care? Why do
I
I always
think
have to take care of Katie's customers?
I think this is an incredibly I'm going to use a word like insane conversation that I'm listening to this happening, because there's so many industries that have it figured out, and employees that work shift work and you're open 12 hours don't work
Mhm.
more than 40 hours a week. And so, I mean, there's a formula out there. Other
Mhm.
industries, other businesses are doing it. I think it's less about not knowing how to. And to your point, Sammy Joe, it's the OGs, the old school folks that are still in the industry that are like, move my cheese, what? Change something? I don't want to have to do this. And so it's just it's actually just a matter of want over can. They can do it. They just choose not to.
Mhm.
Right. No, definitely. I mean, I've only been in this industry for about 10 years or so, so I can't really classify myself as an OG, but I feel like I work like them.
Yes.
I love being here, and I think the problem is that I immerse myself in my job so much that even when I'm not here, I'm thinking about the job. I am the job, and
Yep.
so it makes it a little different for me. But I think eventually they'll change. Eventually, as people grow out of this and you don't get the applications rolling in and you start to get the demands from people, there's all these videos out on TikTok and YouTube, and people are learning how to effectively interview, how to effectively demand their pay, demand their scheduling, demand their
Mhm.
benefits and time off and things of that nature. I think we'll really see a huge wave of that probably over the next 5-10 years or so,
Yeah.
to where
Mhm.
it's going to be, if you want the employee, you're going to have to change the way things are done.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Katie, I will tell you that at that group I was at with the 45 hours, I had an advisor who was like, no, I need to work more than 45 hours. Like I've got customers I got to take care of. I don't want advisor B taking care of my customers. I want to
Well,
be
which is
there. And
cool. I mean, to each one's own, but as a culture, I think it's important to, look at the masses and then dial down to the individual. If there is somebody like you, Sammy Joe, that eats, breathes, and sleeps what she does because she loves it, or like that advisor you're speaking about, Dave,
Mhm.
of course, then cool, have at it. They're probably going to be your next leader. They're going to be the next person that's gonna rule the roost.
He is a
Uh,
service manager now. So
there you go.
Go see.
There you go. So it's but I think from, an industry point of view, I always say from
Mhm.
a customer experience standpoint, I say if you're looking at the next dealership, you're going to get it wrong. Like that's not where we should be looking in order to design an experience for our customers or
Mhm.
employees. We need to start looking outside of the industry. We need to look at the Chick-fil-A's and the Starbucks and the Nordstroms where they're getting it right. Because that's where I talk a lot about the experience competition, and the experience competition is not based off of the other dealership or service drive down the lane, down the street. It's based off of where they spend all their where our customers and our employees spend all their discretionary time and money, and that's with their family on outings, buying coffee, and getting a My Pleasure with a $13 Chick-fil-A combo. So we should be looking outside the industry, I think, in all respects, from a customer experience perspective, but also from an employee experience perspective, because they're getting it right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's a really, really solid point. It's no different than us having this conversation right now and getting some experience and some different
Yes.
perspective. Perspective's always a good thing.
Yeah.
It's
To keep up with the
amazing.
times,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Absolutely. And so, Katie, you actually brought us into segment 3, which is the future,
Didn't even know I did that.
Hey.
which is brought to us by Automotive Warranty Network Incorporated. And with the future, and Katie, to your point, I have always said, like, I'm not interested in best practices because they're usually subpar to what we need to be, right? If we're taking best practices from within our own industry, they're
Yep.
subpar, right? We know we need to be better. So, yes, you have the anomaly dealerships out there, like down your way, Sammy Joe, Ed Roberts, and Bozard, that have elevated a dealership experience to something different. But not every dealership in reality can have a daycare there, right? It's great
Right.
that they have that and provide that, but not every
And an
dealership.
on-site restaurant, and oh my gosh, it's incredible. It's
Right.
yeah.
But not everybody can have that, right? So
A daycare dealership is crazy.
yes. And so, Sammy Joe, one thing that you could change about the industry, and whether that's just the automotive industry or specifically fixed ops, either you take that whichever direction you want to take that.
I think the only thing that I would change is something that I genuinely can't change. And that is the care and concern that people have for other human beings. And I mean that in a very real way, both from the consumer side, from the employee side. I think that in this day and age, we have kind of landed in a place of selfishness and everything's about me all the time. And I think that everybody as a whole is feeling the effects of that, especially in this industry, right? The service advisor is only in it to get that sale, to make that paycheck. The customer is only in it because it's my car and it's your fault. And I think that mentality is the hardest thing. And unfortunately, it's something that I can't change. So I do, when doing interviews with people, try to get a feel for who they really are, because everything can be taught. But love and concern for our fellow human cannot be. That's something that comes from within. So
nope. That is very true. The skills can be learned, they can be taught, but you're not gonna change what is ultimately inside the person, right?
Correct. So I've got no room on my team for people who are all about themselves, because we work as a team here. The customer is the main concern 10 out of 10 times. And if you're more worried about yourself than the customer, then it's not the right place for you. And I'm not saying I'm one of those
You are
people
making a change.
Yeah.
You are changing
I'm not
it.
saying
You are.
I'm not saying
You
that I'm
don't
one
give
of those
yourself
people
enough
who are like,
credit.
I don't know. I think it's so important, and I know that we all go to work for the paycheck, right? Nobody's doing this just because it's fun and we want to work for our life. Like we go to work for the paycheck, but there's got to be some kind of middle. If you don't genuinely enjoy what you do every day, you end up being toxic to everybody around you. So
yes.
Yeah.
I used to always tell my teams that it's, we can't say it's fun, right? If it was that much fun, the owner would be down there on the service desk, right? And they're not. So yes, we're all there trying to do the same thing, right? Even the customer, the customer that's bringing their car in, they need that car to get to work, to do whatever it is they do for work, to feed their families. The advisor is there. We're there all for the same reason. We're all trying to earn a living for our families. And to your point, Sammy Joe, if we could if we could meld all that together and all kind of look at it from each other's eyes, it would be a lot easier to get through, right? We
I
could,
think
as an advisor, understand why a customer is a little impatient. A customer could understand why an advisor can't get their car done in 45 minutes.
Well, I think Sammy Joe is doing more than she gives herself credit for, and
Me
actually
too.
doing the thing that needs to be done in order to make that change. And that's how we hire. And we need to hire right side up. You know, we need to hire for the person, like you said, and not for the skill, because the skills can be taught.
100%.
And it's just so the fact that you're doing that is making a change, and that is going to change the industry slowly. But we all have to look at, you know, who that human being is. Do they show compassion and empathy? And some of the big, you know, pushback I always get is, well, why do I have to be genuine with a customer? Or why do I have to be genuine? I don't even know them. Why do I have to care? And I
Right.
look at them and I say, well, they're the ones that, you know, the reason you have a roof over your head and food on your table and your kids get to go play soccer or hockey or what, or football, whatever it is that they do, clothes on your back. So how can you not feel genuine care and compassion for the person that allows you to live the life you're living? And then from an employee
Right.
standpoint, I
Absolutely.
mean, without the dealer, without you, Sammy Joe, the leaders, they don't have an ability to grow and develop. So how could they not want to show each other compassion and empathy? But it really does boil down to your hiring practices. And I think you are making a much bigger impact than you give yourself credit for. And that's actually something women do a lot. They downplay. We downplay our successes. We downplay the paths we're paving, because we don't look ourselves in the mirror and often celebrate ourselves. We look at ourselves in the mirror instead and pick ourselves apart. So we take a look at all the things
So
we're not
true.
doing instead of looking at the things that we are doing. So I'm going to be your mirror today, Sammy Joe, because I'm going to tell you you're killing it, you're crushing it, and you're doing what you're doing and acting on the things that need to be done to make those changes. So celebrate you, because that's incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. I
You're welcome.
appreciate that. You know, I'm grateful, and I landed in a place where I'm very, very lucky. You know, one of the owners is a woman and the comptroller is a woman, and there's all these women in leadership here that really kind of made it easier for me to step into that confidence, to be able to step up to the plate and do the job. So it's
Right.
really a beautiful thing. You know, it's tough every day. But I think if your team knows that they have somebody who's genuinely rooting for them, it makes it easier for them to get through the day.
Yes.
It makes them easier for them to have the hard conversations with customers. Because every once in a while you do get the customer who genuinely is not a nice person and says very mean things, or tries to make things personal. But if you're there to stop them in their tracks and say, hey, hold on, come have a conversation with me for a second, and you have your team's back, they're more inclined to be loyal to you and stick around anyways and do the things that you ask. So
Absolutely. Well, Katie and Sammy Joe, this has been a very quick hour, and I thank you both for being here. Sammy Joe, thank you for everything you're doing for the industry down there in your corner of the world. And again, Katie, Sammy Joe, thank you so much for spending some time with us here this week on the Fixed Ops Mastermind. A We
Thank you,
Are
Dave,
edition.
for
thank
bringing
you
us
for the
together.
invite.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. It is truly my pleasure to do this. And so everybody, with that, we bid you farewell, and we will see everyone next week. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, that was cool.